Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. So my name is Laetitia. I'm Greenly COO and happy to host this webinar today. So today we'll focus on an acronym that's getting a lot of attention among small and mid-sized businesses, the VSME. So for context, VSME emerged in 2023 when the European Commission, the EFRAG, and SME federations decided to create a truly tailored ESG starter kit for small organizations. So it was initially named the SME ESG Starter, and this framework was tested around French-speaking and European SMEs before being renamed VSME in early 2024. So it's built on 12 key main indicators spread across 4 pillars: environment, social, governance, and supply chain. And it's designed to help companies create a clear first ESG report step by step without being overwhelmed with overly complex processes. So this framework, which is a direct response to the proliferation of standards that we have today, aims to establish a solid foundation in an ESG strategy and guiding companies toward a gradual approach while preparing for more stringent frameworks like another one that we heard a lot about, the CSRD. So today, during this webinar of 45 minutes, we'll explore how we can leverage this and this simplified format to structure an ESG reporting for people who are just starting their strategy. So to discuss this, I have the great pleasure of having Alexis Krisev, an associate at We Are Europe and founder of Hatch. We will question this standard, break down the strengths and benefits, highlight the limits, and explore together how we move forward. So if you're ready, let's get started. Maybe Alexis, you want to say a word about you?
I just want to say hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here today and to discuss this subject of VSME and more generally sustainability reporting together with you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Laetitia.
Thank you, Alexis, for being here. So the objective of this session is to let you with first an update on the latest ESG news, including Omnibus, which is a question on everybody's mind, a concrete understanding of the value of VSME and how we can simplify the life of SMEs, and also a reflection on the other side on the strengths and limitations of this standard, with the question, how can we go further to differentiate ourselves and gain a competitive advantage with a more rigorous framework? So, Alexis, maybe before we start and deep into the details, can you tell us more what you think, what's your experience with VSME and what you've seen in the market with that?
Yeah, thank you for this introduction. Well, if I put a bit of context, we are in a period of time with a lot of questioning around the CSR generally, but CSR reporting in particular, and CSRD, of course, is we are right in the moment of a questioning and challenge around this question of whether we should continue to the same scale or reduce the scale or make it more simple for smaller businesses, etc., etc. VSME originally is a framework that was proposed by the EFRAG, so the board, the institution that has the responsibility in Europe of putting together norms and frameworks for different subjects in terms of sustainability. And VSME was just a proposal that they made for businesses that are not directly impacted by CSRD, so that don't have an obligation of publishing CSR reporting. And the idea was to say, if you're a very small business and you're not directly concerned by this obligation, let's give you a framework that will allow you to do voluntary reporting with main data points, just a few, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a bit more in detail after, but generally like a small framework that's common for everyone And that gives us the main data points that are interesting to compare from a company to another, at least the minimum viable, I'd call them the MVDP, the minimum viable data points that all companies could share. So regarding VSME right now, what I can say is that there is a context where the obligation of reporting is questioned. However, most companies still want to report. When you look at most of our clients, I think it's the same for most of our colleagues who also work in different sustainability strategy, sustainability agencies like ours at Hatch. Our clients want to continue, whether it's compulsory or not. It's becoming a standard for everyone to report on sustainability, which is a big victory because it means that more and more it will become non-sufficient for companies to publish only financial data. It will be more and more normal for a company to also give transparency and data on their so-called non-financial KPIs, even though they are also financial to some extent. So it will become more and more normal. Now the question is, VSME itself is the first proposal for those who don't have a compulsory framework. Is it good enough, sufficient, strategic? All this can be questioned, but at least I think that it gives a basis, the foundations of a tool for those who want to report but don't know where to start.
Exactly. So a couple of years ago, like reporting on ESG was something only for the Fortune 500 companies and not for small companies, because who else would have the resources to have processes, hire consultants, dedicate ESG departments. So that was the old world. But today, even the smaller companies are under pressure from their customers, their employees, their investors, their communities. And I mean, talking for myself, which where I'm leading a small business of 250 employees, and I have to answer beginning of the year like 5 or 6 different ESG requests, and every RFP has more different questions that ask all the same things, which is very time consuming. So there was a big need for this unified framework. Should it be VSME or CSRD? So yeah, I think this will be welcomed by a lot of companies. So maybe before we get into the heart of the matter, we can have a quick review of the ESG regulatory updates. So let's start with CSRD. So CSRD is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So it's a directive from the European Commission that asks companies to report on extra financial metrics. So it's an important step towards transparency. It includes new reporting obligations like indicators to track, which require some organization. We also have the EFRAG, who is pushing to make this reporting clearer and more comprehensive. So the EFRAG is an organization. The expectations are evolving, but companies are building their capabilities. And we presented the VSME, which is the simplified version for smaller businesses, so that they can structure their ESG approach, familiarize themselves with the growing requirements, and prepare for the future without losing sight of operational priorities. So today with Omnibus, which is a proposition to change CSRD, the CSRD, the traceability obligation, etc., the regulatory landscape is a bit of a labyrinth, a maze. Alexis, what do you think are the major challenges that SMEs face in this new regulation environment, and how we can help them engage without getting lost in the complexity?
Honestly, the challenges are many right now. With CSR, but not only with CSR, but the challenges when it comes to CSR right now is the lack of visibility and is the uncertainty. The companies, whether small or big, hate uncertainty, lack of visibility, and we were in a tunnel that was quite clear as to when who is going to have to report and what commitments will be for who, etc., which was the result of 5 years of 2, 3, 4 years of negotiations and putting together a framework that was to some extent complicated, but at least clear in terms of a certain degree of complexity, but at least clear deadlines and a framework. So stepping back brings a lot of uncertainty. Small SMEs have challenges because they are under a lot of pressure in terms of competition, in terms of profitability, in terms of geopolitical environment, which is more and more complex. They have pressure from their clients, who are many of them large corporates, who are expecting more and more commitments, but also at the same time pressurizing prices, etc. So, and of course, they have less tools and means and possibilities to invest in fields that are not directly bringing immediate profitability or immediate return on investment. So yeah, SMEs are in this complex environment, complexity, lack of means, pressure on prices, and the urgency of the short term is there for everybody, but for SMEs in particular.
Thank you. And so digging into VSME, it's not a miracle solution. It's not perfect. There are many limitations, and I want to get to that. But at least it's a good starting point for small businesses who want to engage in ESG without draining too many resources. So what's good about VSME is that it's voluntary. It's specifically designed for small organizations, and it's based on 11 key indicators with about 100 data points versus over 1,000 for CSRD. So it allows for a step-by-step approach with no need for advanced technical expertise, but it facilitates buying from management because of its clarity. So those are the good parts. With, of course, what I said before, which is a centralized ESG framework, which avoids having to report in all the different requests that we receive every day. So you, Alexis, what do you think is your opinion of the usefulness of VSME, and particularly in companies that are not yet subject to stricter regulation? And maybe can you give us a bit more insights into the limits?
Yeah, of course. You were asking me just before on the challenges for SMEs, and I was not talking about the specific CSR challenges, but the CSR challenges are also many for SMEs. And what is difficult when it comes to CSR for an SME is that it's a very wide and very moving subject. CSR is once you start understanding what's behind the idea of CSR, you realize more and more that it's a huge subject, and that it's a subject that becomes more and more obvious and more present. That has started years ago. It's becoming more and more present in the everyday life of companies, SMEs, and larger companies, because, of course, as the crisis we're going through are becoming more and more material, more and more present, they have direct impact on the everyday activity of companies, whether it's because raw materials are more and more expensive, more difficult to source, because talents are more and more difficult to recruit, because etc. Because there's pressure on the price of energy, there is a pressure on innovation, etc., etc. And also HR, etc., governance, traceability, transparency, etc., and regulations. So one difficult challenge for SMEs when it comes to CSR is to organize all this huge subject and know where to start and how to proceed in a step-by-step approach towards a subject that is extremely vast, extremely complex, and where everything seems, where it's difficult to understand what is more a priority, what is less of a priority, etc. So in this context, having a framework and maybe I will add another point. For many companies, it is still questionable whether CSR is really a priority or sustainability is really a priority. Many are convinced, but many still question it, and some CEOs, etc., or excoms, etc., still question whether it's a priority. Unfortunately, so the power of regulation is that the debate is stopped immediately. It's the law, you do it, it becomes a priority. However, the downside to that is that if you do it by force because it's the regulation, maybe you don't understand all the strategic dimension behind it. So the interest of VSME in this context is that it allows to bypass all these discussions and question whether we should prioritize this info, that info, what info do I get in first, and also it gives an immediate benefit because you have a framework that's going to be the same for many companies, so it makes the data comparable. It's the dimension of what's requested is rather very reasonable, actually probably a bit too reasonable for our liking. So you end up with a framework where you will collect the first data. That data, most companies will collect it, and you know that that data is the fundamental basic information that each company should have if they agree to start a voluntary reporting. I will add that it's a voluntary reporting, but most likely it will become the data that most people will ask if you're looking for investment, if you're looking for if you have a contract, tenders, etc. You will be more and more requested to deliver this info. So the interest of a framework like that is it's there, it's set, it's an external body, EFRAG, that has defined it. So it's a selection of data points, and you know that at least collecting this will take you a bit of time, but it's still accessible. And you know that this is going to be more and more the info that is the minimal info that everybody will ask for. Now, should I? Yeah, maybe you want to add a question.
No, but I think it's great to summarize a little bit. So VSME is a great springboard. So it's a good first step into a climate strategy or a climate or ESG strategy in general. It allows for great comparability. So if all companies report on the same framework, we can compare what are the good ones and the less good ones. It's a one-stop shop, as you mentioned. Like clients or investors, they should not ask for any other reports if you're doing VSME because you're doing the standards. And it also allows you to transition towards CSRD, because even though CSRD might be pushed, it's coming for all companies in a distant future. So it's great to be ready. It's great not to stop the efforts internally, and VSME is a good transition. So those are the positive points about VSME. We already have a couple of questions in the chat, so don't hesitate to ask your questions. We can take a couple of them now. So the first one from George is, can you explain your point of view in the usage of VSME as a standard for companies that will probably fall out of scope by the omnibus? And indeed, it was meant for companies who are small, below 250 company, and now it will be used for organization up to 1,000. Do you see difficulties in that? If I can give a first answer, but I'd love to hear your view, Alexis. I think that a company that has 1,000 employees that reports under VSME might get a little bit of backlash in a way, because that might not be felt like enough for a lot of their stakeholders. So it's a good start, but I think expectations from the market might be higher. So they could report VSME, but they might need to go further on some instances. So maybe going towards a more strict frameworks for bigger company is a better strategy. But I mean, starting with VSME, for example, right now in 2025 and improving in the future is still a good first point if you have nothing today. But I don't think a lot of 1,000 people company have nothing. Alexis, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because actually you're highlighting a subject that is precisely the center of attention here that we have also within our collective called We Are Europe. The issue there is that I've talked to people at EFRAG, and VSME has been proposed when CSRD was active and was what was proposed for companies above 250 employees. That was the idea, is for those above 250 to do the full CSRD scope. And VSME has been proposed voluntarily by EFRAG as a tool for those who are out of scope. But out of scope means very small businesses. The idea of FRAG was to propose VSME for a corner shop, for a small business of a few employees, for up to 250. Now, the situation we are facing is that the Commission, European Commission, has used this tool, taken it and said, listen, it's now not 250, but we think that above 1,000 should be the threshold for CSRD. And let's take VSME for the other ones. The problem is a company with 200 employees or 100 employees is not the same as a company with 500, is not the same as 1,000. And now we can really talk about the limitations of VSME. As much as we said it's a good start, it's always good to start somewhere and collect some data, especially if everybody collects the same data. This data is very limited, very, very limited. You have two modules. One is called basic, one is called complementary, or not complementary, but comprehensive, sorry. So if you take the two, you have like 20 subjects and altogether around 100 data points. No value chain, which was mandatory in CSRD. So no value chain description, no stakeholders mapping, no double materiality analysis, when everybody agrees that double materiality is really the tool that is strategic and that should be the backbone of any CSR strategy from today onwards, is becoming a standard. So the problem with that, and also some norms have been removed. So you're not supposed to, with a VSME, you're not talking about your suppliers, you're not talking about your end customers, you're not talking about the communities that are affected by your activity. So you reduce the scope of what you're looking at. You're looking at your direct activities and on a very limited amount of data points. You will talk about your CO2 emissions, purchase of energy. You will talk about the number of health or safety accidents that you've had over the previous year. You may talk about whether there is equal pay between your employees, how many women you have and men in your board of directors, etc. But it's quite limited. So, and because it's limited and because it's not customized to your issues, it's not strategic. It's really reporting. So it's good to have it. However, this is the main message that I want to share and that we share every day at Hatch, but I think it's the same for Greenly. It's the same for many of us. CSR is only relevant when it's strategic. If it's not aligned with your strategy as a company, it becomes a burden. It becomes something that you have to do because you have to do it, but you're really lacking the strategic dimension and the benefit for your business. So it's not bad. It has some data points, and I might not even call it a good start, because reporting and collecting the data should not be the start of what you do in terms of CSR. It's a good base of data. It's a good first data collection review. However, data collection and reporting should not be the start of your CSR approach. Your CSR strategy should start with identifying your stakes, building your strategy, building your roadmaps, rolling out your roadmaps, and then, of course, as you're doing that, collecting data to check if you're going in the right direction, if you have impact, if you're reducing your environmental footprint, if you're increasing your social impact towards your beneficiaries, etc. So, if, as Laetitia said, if you're a 1,000 people company and you're only collecting data of VSME and nothing more, I think I'm afraid your CSR strategy might be very, very, and really not sufficient and not strategic. So will not be delivering value to your company.
We have a next question from Usha, which is, what is the profile of companies currently reporting against VSME in terms of sector, size, etc.? So VSME is rather recent, so there are not tons of companies, but from what we've seen at Greenly and the companies that we support, it's a rather small company, small companies. From what I've seen, but maybe Alexis, you've seen something else, it's mostly B2B companies who have needs to contract with bigger players who are asking them to report on a strategy. And yeah, maybe Alexis, you want to tell us a bit more about the companies currently reporting on VSME, or do you see the same thing as me?
Actually, many clients want to do a voluntary reporting. Many, those who are falling out of the scope of CSRD, most of them say we still want to do reporting, to report. So voluntary reporting is many different companies who are in this process. Even those who want to report, who will have the obligation of reporting in 2028, they say, okay, in 2026 we will do a voluntary reporting. What we propose to them usually is to highlight the data that is compatible with VSME, that is present in VSME, but to go a step further. So we are actually working together with colleagues and other companies to build a proposal that encapsulates VSME, a referential that has VSME, but that adds to VSME a few additional data points that we think are relevant and that could be a bit more strategic for companies. So I would say VSME is now the first step that some companies are taking because they were ready to report. So they are saying, okay, let's start with VSME. We look at it and we already collect this data. Most of the times, most of this data they have already, because it's, again, quite simple data to collect, but it's still 60 to 100 data points that you have to collect. So it's still a bit of an exercise. But I doubt if many companies will remain in the long term reporting on VSME only. I think they will take it as a first step, as we said, as a fundamental foundation, but they will extend progressively. It's actually also something we advise most of our clients is to have a progressive approach to reporting. So starting with VSME as soon as possible is a good way of starting collecting info that will be needed anyway, but to see it as a step towards something a bit more comprehensive.
So next question from Flavio. Considering the stop the clock resolution, how soon the market will expect the companies who fell outside of the scope to report on a voluntary basis? I would say, like, even before there were CSRD or omnibus discussions, companies were increasingly under pressure to report these KPIs. So I don't see that stopping. With the stop the clock is mostly for CSRD, so a more complex framework, and it's only moved 2 years. So I think there will be more and more expectations, and also a lot of companies started to prepare for CSRD before. And so now they're going to be more pressuring toward the supply chain, even though they're not in the scope anymore. Some companies keep doing it because they're ready and they don't want to stop an initiative that was costly to put in place and has a lot of benefits to keep. So that's what we're seeing, is that there is. I mean, how soon the market will expect companies to report is now, and maybe not as many companies as it could have been, but that's just a question of time. Alexis, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to start the same way you started, which is that the time for reporting started even before, and one of the reasons why CSRD and VSME is interesting is because it's a norm. So it's the purpose is to unify the way companies report, and also there is an aspect in the omnibus proposal is that large corporates or banks, etc., are not supposed to ask too many information to smaller companies, and they're supposed to ask what's in VSME, but not more than that. So I would say it depends on the companies. For some companies, they already have to report every year to their banks. They have to report to the investors. They have to report to when they sell their products in distribution of larger supermarkets. They have data that they want to collect. Also, because the larger companies will have to report on CSRD, they're asking that data because those other companies are in their value chain. So yeah, I think that data is already expected. The adaptation to a framework that would be VSME for everyone, it's hard to tell how quickly it will go. The problem with the current step back is that it brings everybody back to a situation where everyone can have their own reporting standard, and they will. I think that for a while now, we will continue to have requests from different players that request different data. So it could actually be a proactive approach of a company, of a small business, to say, okay, let me collect my VSME data first. I have it there. If anybody asks me for data already, I will tell them, listen, this is already the VSME data. This is my VSME reporting, or maybe VSME plus. VSME plus a few more data. And to proactively try and push a standardized and centralized data that could be the same for all the requests. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yes, you are. I mean, to me, I let the audience answer if you.
don't hesitate to say if you don't understand. Just say
So we have a
in the
question
chat.
from Gert. What is the relation between VSME and ISO 26000 and GRI? Do you want to take this one, Alexis?
ISO 26000 and also GRI. There are now frameworks that are showing the compatibility, etc. ISO 26000 covers much more subjects. Is a much wider framework. Is the framework that is used for some labels, such as a B Corp, for example, or other labels, or if you're familiar with some notations such as EcoVadis or those ones, they are based on this framework. I think you correct me if I'm wrong, Laetitia, but in tools such as Greenly, when you collect your data, you will have that's an interesting aspect of having a tool for collecting your data, especially in this moment of uncertainty. You will have the correspondence, you will have the interoperability, meaning multi-referential approach, which means that you will collect your data and you will automatically see how much of your data covers which framework. So you might have, maybe, I don't know about Greeny, but from my understanding, the plan is to have this visibility on what you have and what you.
So there are many frameworks that exist today. Eventually, I hope it will all reduce and we'll have only one universal framework. But for now, we have many. And to compare that to financial accounting, there are still several standards in financial accounting, while it's as old as the world. So there might still be some frameworks surviving. But yeah, indeed, the advantage of having them in the platform is to manage what we call interoperability. So, if I can give a very concrete example, gender gap. You want to know how much more men are paid than women in a company. But there are 200 ways of measuring the gender gap. It could be like average hourly wage or yearly salary. It could be gross or net. It could be including the CEO, excluding the CEO. It could be by tranche. It could be a median or an average. So there are like many definitions of the same metric. And what we want to do within a platform is that you have your source of truth. And even if the question is asked differently or has a different methodology of calculation, if you've answered that question for another framework, we want to be able to export that question to the new framework. So that would be the relationship between multiple frameworks, is that there are some data points in common. There are some data points that are new, but we wouldn't want a company to start over every time they have to do a new framework. And so that's why using a platform can help. Question from Maxime. Do you think VSME's requirements... You want to say something, Alexis?
Yeah, I just wanted, because I didn't reply on GRI as well. I'm not an expert in GRI, but there's more qualitative data in GRI when the data in VSME is strictly quantitative. There's very little, and that's one of the problems with VSME, actually. There is very little space for describing your policies, describing your strategies, and more qualitative data. It's not really what's expected. Yeah, so that's one of the main difference. And you can easily find there have been last year some comparable frameworks that have been published to see where the overlapping is and where is the compatibility between GRI and the CSRD. But I'm hearing also companies who are now saying, because now CSRD is not compulsory anymore, we will go back to reporting according to the Global Reporting Initiative. We think it's a more relevant framework. Again, it illustrates the fact that it gives more room for personal adaptation and for doing what you think is best for you.
Thank you. And so to complete on Maxime's question, do you think VSME requirements are enough, or should we report more information like double materiality? So it depends what you call enough. If you have nothing, it's better than nothing, but it's definitely not enough to really drive business decisions and become a leader in the transformation of your industry. So I think, yeah, it's a good start. It's something. I mean, it's better than nothing. But there might be stakeholders that ask more from you than what's included in VSME. Alex, do you want to say a word or?
Yeah, I agree. It's what I had an occasion to say also. It's a maximum of 100 data points. And again, for me, it's not, I mean, it's enough if what you want to do is to tick the boxes and make sure that you answer your stakeholders' compulsory request of give me the main data. It's at least it's there. If you want to take CSR as a sustainability as a strategic tool and align your business strategy with sustainability stakes, it will not be enough. And even then, even if you want to do only reporting, I think you should definitely double materiality for us is a must. And it's very possible for an SME to have a simplified version of double materiality. Actually, we have with our teams, we have worked on a simplified and less costly approach to double materiality assessment, so that you can have a quick and efficient approach. But at least the interest of double materiality is to really identify key stakes that are relevant to your business, because they have either an impact, external, inside out, or they are bringing risks and opportunities to your business. So really, when it comes to CSR, the best advice we can give is to try and find and understand which amongst all the environmental, social, governance subjects are bringing risks and opportunities to your business. There's no better advice to a company than telling them try and prioritize the ESG data that addresses subjects that are bringing risks and opportunities to your business. And to know that, you have to conduct a double materiality analysis. That's the answer it will give you. And then again, I mentioned already, but it's a bit poor on the subjects it addresses. It's why not as a starting point? But again, I think it would be really relevant to try and go a step further as quickly as possible.
Perfect. Maybe before concluding, we can explore some best practices that we've seen in SME that are starting the VSME. So, Alexis, do you have some piece of advices? If you can give 2, 3, 4 piece of advice for SME that starts with ESG, what would that be?
For me, again, I will try and avoid repeating things I've said too much. But again, for us, the motto is strategic approach to CSR. Try and not do it because it's compulsory. Try and not do it you will see that it's connected, but not doing CSR reporting because you have to do it and do it alone in your corner there without talking about it internally. Be strategic and be pragmatic. So it's also interesting to start by what you already have, what you already know, and to build up on existing data. Internal communication is key. So really, when it comes to best practices, is don't estimate the importance of aligning people and taking internal partners. Try and take that opportunity to explain to your top management the benefits that ESG can bring, and don't fall in the trap of having a vision of CSR that is only regulatory. That's a bit of the problem we've had with CSRD. So yeah, my advice would be have a proper kickoff, have a proper start to this approach. Take that occasion for internal sensitization and to re-explain to everyone. Something I'm very always impressed by is that in many companies, most people still in 2025 don't really know what ESG is, what sustainability is. Many things it's only climate change, or it's so having that obligation to report on some data is a good occasion to realign everyone and to raise the level of knowledge and understanding of what are we talking about. We're talking about many subjects, and this is an occasion to align and to. It's really still very important to raise everybody's level of understanding of what we're talking about, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. Many people think CSR is just ecology. It's something for activists, etc. When it's actually 100% business. It's just business. So take that also that framework of business to talk about sustainability, internal training, sensitization, have a collective approach to the subject, build on what's existing, and think strategy. So again, for me, double materiality is really a good start in all cases. It has a bit of a cost, but it's not so high, and it has a big return on investment from my point of view.
Thank you. So indeed, centralizing data, engaging teams, essential elements for simplifying the ESG process.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one word, sorry. It's a process that might be progressive, will take time, etc. Honestly, it's not not just advertising for Greenly, but from my experience, for companies who are a bit like starting the process a bit behind, having a tool to centralize the data is most of the case they don't regret taking that step. I don't know how much Greenly costs for SMEs, but it's pretty much affordable, and it has also a good return on investment, because then it allows you to continue having your data year after year. Even if you have many people contributing, you will have everything centralized in one place. And if the framework and the law changes again and again, and we will not know the framework until the end of this year, it's a good way, because you can rely on your tool to then adapt to your framework, not the other way around.
Absolutely, that's a major thing to keep in mind with all the uncertainty that we have today. We don't know what will be the framework in 6 months, 1 year. So at least if you have a platform, exactly. You're all set with someone taking care of you in a way. Great. So we are almost at time. So to conclude, there are, I would say, 3 key points to remember. VSME allows SMEs to start their ESG journey simply and progressively. It's not a final solution. It's just a step to prepare for more complex framework like CSRD. And about Greenly, so we offer an intuitive platform to help structure this approach, reduce the administrative burden, and ensure compliance with this framework in a collaborative and intuitive way. So no, VSME doesn't solve everything, but it helps take the first step, ask the right question, and pave the way for a more solid and transparent and credible ESG strategy. So thank you all for participating to this webinar. Big thank you to Alexis for your expertise and valuable advice. If you have any further question, or if you need help adopting VSME, don't hesitate to reach out. You can have our contact in our website. And yeah, so it was great spending this time with you, and so see you soon.
I give my email in case. Thanks a lot for having me. It was great having this discussion, and see you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.